I've always been hugely passionate about martial arts, and since the day I can remember I've been practicing martial arts, and most specifically Thai boxing and Wing Chun. Now when I was in my early 20s, one of my good friends and one of my trainers was a guy who owned a security firm in Birmingham, and what he did with this security firm was that he supplied doormen to some of the toughest, roughest nightclubs in Birmingham. And he was also a doorman, and he'd been a doorman for many, many years. Now this friend of mine, he's built, and still is built, like a brick shithouse. He's built like Mike Tyson, and he has eyes like a fucking shark. So when he looks at you, it's absolutely terrifying. You think, I'm dead. Now, when I was training with him once, I was asking him about his stories of being on the doors. The stories on the doors. What's the scores on the doors, Mr. Friend of mine? And he used to tell me about all the mad stuff that happened, all the life-threatening things that happened. He talked about the times when he would have to confiscate, believe it or not, samurai swords that people had tried to stuff down their trousers and walk into nightclubs with. He talked about how he had to take knuckle dusters off people, how sometimes people would get really pissed off for being ejected from a nightclub and they would come back with their mates and a shotgun. So some pretty mad, harrowing, crazy shit that he went through. And my mate, who, as I've said, built like Mike Tyson, eyes like a shark, I said, were you ever afraid? Were you ever scared when you were on the doors? And are you ever afraid when you're on the doors? Because bear in mind, at the time he had 2 young children as well and a wife, so he had a lot that he could potentially lose. And he said yes, and this surprised me. He said, yes, I was scared, and I'm always scared when I go to work. In fact, sometimes I'm petrified of what could happen. But he says, but obviously when you're on the doors, you can't allow that little voice, that sneaky little voice, to tell you that you're in the shit, because you could very quickly and very rapidly get into the shit. So he had this little technique, this mantra that he used to say to himself, and I still to this day use this mantra, and you might want to use this mantra whenever you're facing a fear, whenever you're facing a big anxiety that's in your way. He used to say this: I'll handle it. So if his voice would say, what if they hit you with that sword? I'll handle it. What if you lose a leg? I'll handle it. What if you get glassed? I'll handle it. What if you go down and they start jumping on you? I'll handle it. What if you get disabled? I'll handle it. And although these things never happened to him, thank God, and never have happened to him since that time, that mantra has always stuck with me. Now I know now the psychological reason behind that. There's a thing called the hedonistic treadmill, which essentially means whenever we overestimate how happy we're going to be when something happens, and we overestimate how miserable something will be when something happens, we always go back to a baseline emotional state. So if my mate had lost a leg, yes, it would have been a miserable experience, but over time he would get back to his baseline state. It would be okay with it. He would handle it. So when you're facing a pitch you might not win, instead of ruminating on what could happen, just say to yourself, I'll handle it. Maybe you haven't got that job. I'll handle it. Maybe you won't get that book deal. I'll handle it. Maybe you won't get that song you've just written into the charts. I'll handle it. See how it goes for you, and know this: if he can handle it, anyone can handle it.